So talking about the exalted and debilitated placements of the moon. The moon is the mind, the consciousness, the manas, also called the Jiva Atman. It's the separate soul joined the universal soul. Hey, it's Sam, and I'm making this video about the exalted and debilitated positions of the moon. I'm here in Kate Sessions Park in San Diego, beautiful park near my home. We're talking about the exalted and debilitated place of the moon, which brings that quality of the moon into very clear focus. The moon is the manas, or the mind, and the part that is changing with all the different life experiences. We have this feeling of life happening in our heart, and the moon is where we try to feel calm and peaceful and connect to a sort of coherent identity. This dog just came running by me. And this coherent identity has a certain feeling, and it relates back to like our childhood and how we've been, all of our memories, and of course all of our emotions and our moods, and all of these things have to do with the moon. And so the moon is the part of us that wants to be, basically just wants to feel good. It's a very simple thing to understand with the moon. It's why it's also one of the most important indicators in Vedic astrology, for sure. It's literally how we feel both moment to moment and just in general in our life experience. And so of course we want that to feel stable and solid. A lot of things like insanity and mental illness and all of that, you look at the moon for that, because the person's mind and heart and emotions are unsettled and unstable. You want to understand, when we talk about even the mind in Indian thinking, the mind is literally the heart. In the West, the mind winds up being something that's related to the intellect and intelligence and data gathering, and that's called the mind. But it's really a very deeper, or it's a much deeper thing in Indian thinking. That subtle realm of the mind, which is called the buddhi, or the intellect, is actually related to Mercury, and Mercury was born from the manas, or from that emotional mind that I'm talking about, that's related to the moon. So the moon is deeper than that intellect, and so when we say the mind, we actually mean that, and not the the intellect or that faculty of discrimination, which is called, which is more related to Mercury. So again, this moon, this mind, this feeling state wants to be stable. Number one, we want to feel good, we want to feel connected, we want it to be stable. So the sign of Taurus is where we feel that exaltation point of the moon. Also, it's called the Mula Trikona, because it's where that restless mind is, feels much more grounded and stable. And if you want to understand the moon, you want to look at the nature of water and how water is impressionable by all of the different elements upon it. Like if you add fire to water, you get heat and steam. If you add air to water, you get waves on the surface. And of course, if the ground shakes, then you get waves in the water as well. But the moon and water is the most adaptable and adjustable, at least on the surface. And just like we live, just like waves live on the surface of the mind, waves live on the surface of the ocean and of the water, we see the waves. Underneath the water, there's stillness. Underneath the surface, rather, of the water, there's stillness. Same is true with the heart and what we would call the mind. The surface of the mind is the emotions, just like the surface of the world. So we interact with the world on a surface level through the agency of the emotions. right? We feel each moment, and it creates an impression in us, and we want those feelings to be good. We want feelings that, again, help us, take us closer to beauty and love and joy, take us something that's deeper than just the emotions, because the depth of the heart is pure love. So this is why we naturally gravitate toward things that make us feel good and that lead us closer to the source of the heart, which is that pure love. So the source of all emotion is love, is pure love. That's the source of all emotions, including hate and negativity. Their source is pure love. But that's different than the emotional love that we experience, or those momentary feelings of happiness. Because that momentary feeling of happiness is just on the other side of that is, anger and hate and all the negative emotions. But the source of those emotions is also pure love. But it's pure love that didn't really work out, right? And you could look at a small child to see how emotions work, because they have like two emotions. One is like, ah, and the other is, ah. And inside, we're kind of the same way, right? We want emotions that are just like, okay, everything's beautiful, everything is flowing, everything is one, rather than emotions that are like, ah, I'm separated, I'm disconnected from my heart, I'm disconnected from the truth. But we become very sophisticated, and this is how we can understand the intellect as well. See, we don't think that we're like a little baby. We don't think we're just, big babies walking around who just want to feel good and want to feel connected to the heart. No, we think we're much more sophisticated, and the only thing that's more sophisticated is our intellect, is our explanations, is our stories. But underneath it all, and I mean underneath all of that is the same simple feeling and emotion, and we gravitate toward the thing that feels good, and we want to avoid the thing that feels bad, right? Just like children, we want to gravitate toward the things that feel good because they connect us closer to the heart, and we want to avoid the things that feel bad because they make us feel disconnected, and that state of ah. And so underneath it all, the moon, or the mind and the heart, are trying to merge and unify all of the disconnected experiences of life, all the disconnected feelings and experiences and all that. We're trying to feel whole because we don't feel whole. Because we've been separated from spirit in order to incarnate and live our life in accordance with our karma. There's been a separation from spirit, and we're trying to feel whole again. Then the only way to feel whole again is to go deeper than just the emotions. So you can understand that exaltation point of the moon in Taurus as something that stabilizes the emotions enough to where we can then sink into the depth of the heart and feel peaceful and contented, and what we call in yoga santosha, which is it sort of translates as contentment, but it's a contentment that's much deeper. It's literally not just, we tend to use the word content like, after we eat a meal, we feel content. It's kind of like that, but it's much more than that. That's a kind of momentary contentment, in combination with a full belly and sort of dullness, maybe. But it's a contentment where we're literally stop longing for something. The moon creates longing. And it even says in Brihat Parashara Sastra that the moon is lustful and creates longing for something. And what we're longing for is we're longing to merge. We're longing to feel whole. And so the contentment of santosha is where that longing stops for a while, right? So ponder this about the moon and the mind, and longing and stillness. Now, of course, the opposite point in Scorpio is restless. Scorpio is where we sense that life is fragile, we could be unsafe, we need to protect ourselves, that we're vulnerable, that we're not in control. All these kinds of things are related to Scorpio, and this unsettles the mind, it unsettles the heart. Certain energies are very good there, like Jupiter, the Sun, Mars, because they take on that challenge, right? They take on the challenge of that uncertainty, and they say, okay, I have to get strong, and they step up for battle. But the moon, again, it's not the part of us that feels that. The moon just wants to feel good. It wants to feel happy. It wants to connect to something, to feel stable, solid, peaceful, connected, so we can sink into that truth of the heart. In Scorpio, there is uncertainty, restlessness, stress, worry. We conjure up and we create the feeling of vulnerability that we then sort of project outward. We create a certain, there's a vulnerability and an atmosphere of intensity and drama and, fear and worry and stress. And so when the moon is in Scorpio, of course, let's say like if it's in a natal chart, there will just be this feeling of alarm, somewhat like, I have to be careful, you have to be careful, and I'm not in control, and I'm very vulnerable here, and my emotions are I'm very exposed, and I have to watch out, I have to be careful. And it's that feeling of, rather than the feeling of Taurus, which would be everything stable, solid. I notice all the things around me that are stable and solid. Again, you want to understand, with all the planets, they have a desire and a psychological, sort of principle that's based on the sign they're in. So again, when the moon is in Taurus, there's just a recognition and a noticing. We notice on that emotional level. We feel, because it's the moon, we feel how everything is stable and solid. We can feel and notice any of them. I'm standing on a solid earth. I'm always standing on a solid earth. And we can notice that, and we feel that solid structure when the moon is in Taurus. Not just the solid earth, but the solid relationships we have, the things that are stable and solid, we feel it. When the moon is in Scorpio, for example, we feel we could be standing on the same solid earth in the same marriage, but instead what we feel is how, okay, the earth is solid, but it's spinning 1,000 miles an hour, and everything could explode at any minute. And I have this relationship and this partner, but it could change at any moment. I have no control over what they might do. In fact, I saw them looking at their phone and looking at a picture of their ex-girlfriend, and our radar goes up around all those things that are uncertain, that are unstable and unsettled. And so our mind becomes, patterned and habituated to those things that are unsettling, that are unsettled, that are uncertain. So this is the range of expression that you see between the Taurus and the Scorpio sort of parameters, and the moon being exalted and debilitated, and these different qualities that come into the mind, that come into the moon and into the heart. And so, again, whether they're in the natal chart or not, the reason for understanding and for examining the exaltation and the debilitation points is because it shows a quality of the planet itself beyond those literal placements. Meaning, we can understand many, some of the most important qualities of the moon by examining its exaltation point and its debilitation point. This Ucha and Nicha, which are the two Sanskrit words for those placements, reveal a kind of range of expression from the highest, which is being stable and settled and grounded, to the lowest, which is feeling triggered, kind of paranoid, looking for uncertainty, feeling stressed about a lot of imagined fears. We, can come to understand the way the mind works. That's why studying astrology is really understanding the different principles of the mind and consciousness itself, because we're studying these living forces of life. And again, one of the things about Taurus is that it's very present as well. We're very present in our body with Taurus. It's very present to the moment and the beauty of the moment and the experience in the body and the feeling, of the people around us, and really relaxing into that. One of the things about Scorpio is it can be very ungrounded and not present, and again kind of restless, and expecting things to be difficult, and sort of like in the future or in the past, about a past regret or past abuse and some future vendetta or some future thing. Again, it kind of takes us out of that settled, calm, and present moment. Again, whether the moon is there or not, it gives us a deep indication of how the moon operates, which part of us is related to the moon, and that's why we examine those Ucha and Nicha signs.